Hello, everybody, and welcome in. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. We are ready to go under snowy skies here in Michigan. Weird when you consider that it is getting close to May and it's snowing outside, but it is Michigan. It's happened before. It'll happen again, but we still like complaining about it, myself included. An hour ago, I bit my tongue, so I'm not sure how it's going to come along. It makes me feel kind of like I've got a sore on my tongue. It kind of could make me, uh, it could deal and work negatively towards my pronunciation and everything there. We'll see how that ends up working itself out. But let's get into it. What are we talking about today? Well, you can not wonder anymore because here it is. The transfer portal. It was happening yesterday. That thing was getting a big time workout. We'll look back and reflect on the players that jumped in and what it could mean for Michigan moving ahead. Who's in? Who's out for the Maize and Blue? We also, if you missed it this morning, it's a pretty fresh news, a update on the future scheduling for the Michigan football program. That came out today. But we'll talk about the possibility of it being a day where Michigan is adding to their future football roster, not subtracting like what happened yesterday and what we will get to. And right before I was coming on, I noticed, we do read your feedback during the show, and Scott said we needed a forecast. And it feels a little cheap to the day of somebody announcing to jump in on a forecast, but I do aim to please. So for Scott, I have put in a forecast. I'm feeling it when it comes down to Michigan and Brady Prieskorn. Here he is, a young man from Rochester Hills. He dropped a top 8 a little over a month ago, Michigan included, along with a host of other schools. Look at him: OSU, Bama, Georgia, among others. And then back on March 17th, he was in Ann Arbor. He has a 3:15 announcement coming up today. A tight end out of Rochester, Adams. He is a 4-star, and he'd look great in the Maize and Blue. Michigan already with a tight end commitment in Hogan Hansen, so this would give them 2 tight ends. And you just think about the success that Michigan has had at the position. You go even further back with Jim Harbaugh and the success that he has had with the tight end position in college and putting those guys in the pros. What it adds up to is tight end you at Michigan. If you're a tight end, Michigan uses a lot of 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets when they're out there. You want to catch the ball, you want to block, you want to learn how to play tight end, play in the NFL, come to Michigan. Seems like, without even, sounding biased, which we are, that Michigan, it's not biased. It's a really good landing spot for a potential tight end. If you were talking with the top tight ends around the country and say, hey, where do you think I would go? Well, you want to go to a program that's winning. You want to go to a good school, chance to win a championship, get to the NFL. Michigan is checking all the boxes when it comes down to tight end. So Prieskorn, when it comes down to it, and my forecast that I think I'm going to tell you what really did it. I felt like putting in a forecast back about a month ago when Prieskorn visited. Not that I was privy to the information on how his visit went or for things like that. However, I did see this picture, and it has since given us thousands of words. And it's this particular photo. that I have put up on the screen when Brady Prieskorn was on his visit to Michigan. For those of you that might be just listening, we want to give the podcast some love. We're looking at a picture of a group of men at midfield at Michigan Stadium. And the players, there's some recruits. I have it from left to right on the screen, but let me go for intrigue and suspense purposes. Let's start out over on the right side. You have Blake Frazier, who I did have a forecast in on, and he went blue last week. Blake Frazier is a big offensive tackle. He is pictured in this photo. It's his own photo that he put on Instagram or Twitter. I'm not sure which one. Actually, now that it says @_Blake Frazier for the credits, I do know that's a Twitter handle. So it was on Twitter. This was Frazier's photo. Next to Frazier is Jaden Davis, the quarterback out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Providence Day. There he is, pictured right in the middle, standing next to running back from Cincinnati, Ohio, Jordan Marshall. I should mention I had a forecast in on Davis that came right. Marshall in this photo. And as everyone knows, the running back out of the Buckeye State committed to Michigan. So that just leaves with Frazier, Davis, and Marshall. You've got Prieskorn. And there he is. This tells me, when I saw it, I thought all these guys were going to ultimately end up at Michigan. Now that they all have gone to Michigan and we're waiting to Prieskorn, I feel very comfortable in putting my forecast in for Michigan. I think Prieskorn accepts the challenge. I think later on today, he picks the maize and blue for all of the reasons that I have said. Prieskorn, 315, Michigan. Let's see where the people are at when it comes down to this particular forecast, this particular recruit, where the Michigan fans' mindset is at. Mark is mentioning that Prieskorn is an in-state top tight end. He says a must win. What was your take on spring game by Moten? I thought he looked as a good linebacker convert. Nakai Hill-Green, he mentions NHG. Maybe not fully recovered. Upcoming edge who played linebacker 3 or Rolder. So he's asking about the transfers, which I am going to get to. Look, I liked Moten and I liked NHG. NHG played in the spring game. You know, last year after dealing with a hamstring, he looked like he was 100%. But it is depth that we will get to and where he figures in. Did he want to be a third stringer looking up at two guys in front of him thinking, how am I going to get on the field? I think, that's just, it feels to me as easy as that. And some of the same stuff when it comes down to RJ, he's got guys behind him. He's got guys in front of him, and, guys want to play. You want to get into the NFL? You want to get your name called like on Thursday? It's hard if you're buried on a depth chart. You know, to get some tape out there, and these guys are going to get some tape. It's going to happen. You looked at the scholarship numbers at some point, Mark, it was going to happen. I am on the injured list, although I don't know if you could tell or not. It sounds like at times I'm dealing with like I have an ice cube in my mouth or something like that. But moving forward, it's not the last time that this will happen. You would think, what do people say? It's like when you trip outside or something, you tell your parents, tell your mom, just be more careful. Okay, be more careful. I just tripped. I've got a lot of experience, obviously, by chewing. I mean, like You tell yourself it wasn't like I was mowing through something or anything. And then it just happened. And so I guess it happens. Doesn't it happen every once in a while? I don't know. I can't say it happens every year. It's been like maybe I don't know, for 2 years, but it's happened before. Always good to see Andres. Scott already looking at the depth chart and forecasting that Ernest Hausman will be our best defensive player this season. Wow, that's quite a statement, Scott. One of the Magnificent Seven coming in. He likes the 50 and forecast. Prieskorn is a lock. Hopefully, Scar doesn't try to convince him to play linebacker. There you go. A guy who came in as a tight end and as a linebacker. Mark is talking about Grant and Graham to become the best defender with no backslide by Will Johnson. Well, if you're asking me who is Michigan's best defensive player, Will Johnson is one of the first names that I think about throwing out there. It seems very easy, the way that he came on last year towards the end of the season, the way that he came in with the rankings that he had, and he lived up to it. So I would pick Will Johnson, but quickly thereafter, I think that no, I would not go, although I think both Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham are fine selections. I would say Chris Jenkins after Will Johnson is Michigan's best defensive player. Richard talking about Prieskorn, saying that he needs weight room work, but he'll fill out for sure. Yeah, I mean, these guys are in high school. He's pretty good size already. Got a pretty good frame on him. I think he'll be all right there. Scott saying Grant and Graham will help free up our linebackers to make more plays. Tight end. Iowa has a bit better track record, and we need their tight end coach. Well, they have had some success, no doubt, at tight end, Iowa. But if you want to go to Iowa and sit out there in the corn, and when December rolls around, just chill, then you go to Iowa. You come to Michigan, and you have all of the positives that you would have at Iowa, and then you would also are going on and playing in the Ohio State game, and you're going to Indianapolis, and you're going to the college football playoff. It seemed like a pretty easy decision for me when it comes down to it. And as far as moving on from Grant Newsome, it's you can say, you guys can say whatever you want. So to get a tight end coach from Iowa, you need to bump somebody off the staff, and that would be Newsome, who is the tight end coach. And I like Grant Newsome. He is doing an exceptional job from what I see on the recruiting trail and as a position coach. And he's a young guy, and he went to Michigan. So I would, if the Iowa coach was on line one saying, hey, I want to come in, I'd say, well, we don't have any openings. We'll get back to you if one comes up. So that's the way I see it. Mark, when it comes down to the coach, Richard is having a hard time focusing what with the NFL draft happening on Thursday. Sorry. I understand, Richard. It is happening. It's almost here. I'm biding my time. I'm waiting. At night, I'm glad that there's plenty of baseball, playoff basketball, and hockey, which I'm enjoying both of them more than I have in years. When the pandemic came around for, 25 of the last 30 years, a group of friends and I we would have a fantasy postseason hockey draft. And, it was fun. We'd all get together. Then the pandemic happened and we didn't get together, and we didn't have the draft. And then we didn't have it last year. And I can tell you, I didn't watch as much postseason hockey. It was tough watching it with nobody in the stands. It was tough watching all sports like that. But hockey was one, you see it's fun tuning into the beginning of the game when they have the anthem, everybody's going nuts, and then this pandemic was like, whoa. All of that to say we're back with the postseason draft, and it makes the first round riveting. The only thing that would be better, and I miss these days, and it's gonna happen, maybe next year, that the Detroit Red Wings would be back in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I look forward to that. DJ Turner and Mozzie Smith get drafted in the first round. Oh, he's asking, do they? I don't think. I think Mozzie has the better chance to. I think Turner is more a second day guy. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they both go in the first round. But that would be my pick when it comes down to burner. Shadyville talking about this would be the most top 100 players we've had in a class in a long time. He's already counting his Prieskorns, already counting his chickens. Account 22 doesn't think nobody in the first round for Michigan. Prieskorn could be our number 2 tight end next season with Barner graduating. Sure, he could be, but you remember they've got Hibner, Bredesen, Marlon Klein. I know you're putting him behind Colston Loveland, who can't go pro. They bring in 2 tight ends this year. It's a lot of bodies that you need to jump. Maybe he will. Maybe it'll happen, but that's it. That's all I got to say. Shadyville says nothing against Hill Green, but no one liked him in 2021. He was passed by a true Frosh Colson. I liked him. I liked Nakai Hill Green. I thought he was a good player. I thought that last year, if you didn't have that hamstring issue, that he would have been out there and he could have been Michigan's starter. I thought he was. I had the up arrow next to him. Of course, the hamstring, that's going to affect your standing on the team. So let's recap for those that are just joining us. Later on today, 2 hours, right around now, Brady Prieskorn will make his college announcement. It's expected to be, for me, I am saying that with a forecast, and I look at this picture with all the other Michigan commitments, I think Prieskorn is going to go blue. That's not the only announcement to keep an eye on. Jerod Smith. Jerod Smith recently took an unofficial visit to Ann Arbor. He has a twin brother, Jacob, that has U of M in his top 7. I'm trying to see if I have an announcement time. It'd be nice if it was happening like right now. But we have, let's see. We might have an update on him. Let's see, trying to find out about what time. We still don't know that, but Smith, defensive end, 257, 6'3". He's a 4-star, and he's making his announcement today. There's a lot of folks that think he is going to pick Michigan. So it is something to keep in mind, that Michigan could not only be hauling in 1 4-star, they could be hauling in 2 4-stars. And I have to say that even though it's not a sure thing, and Josh Henske on the Maize and Blue Review did a story recently, and he said it's not 100% sure thing that his brother, Jerod's brother, Jacob, necessarily follows him to wherever he's going to go. But you got to think about the Smith brothers, that if Michigan gets Jerod, that his brother, Jacob, would at some point follow. That's a guess of mine, without knowing every particular about the family. And even though I just said what I said with Henske about these guys blazing their own trail and everything else, I would still think Michigan had just had a recent pair. I'll say a package deal out of Texas with Jymon and German Green, the brothers who came north to Ann Arbor. These two guys are from Connecticut, but I would feel good about Jacob. I'll put Michigan as the leader if Jerod goes to Michigan today. How about that? That seems pretty obvious and pretty straightforward when it comes down to it. We get back to some of the feedback. Count 22. People are talking about the transfers, so let's go to that. First, I want to remind everybody that Prieskorn, Frazier, who's next, looking at the Smith brothers, how the class is going to end up rounding itself out. Also looking to the basketball portals now with 2 scholarships available after Glenn going into the portal yesterday. You want to know what's going on and shaking with Michigan inside and out? You join up the Maize and Blue review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. And that's a smart move by you heading over there. All right. Account 22 saying 3 transfers that were buried on the depth chart. Hill Green is very slow, unfortunately. Hibner burned him. All right. Well, Moten I really liked, but you look at the depth chart, McCarthy Page, Rod Moore, Quentin Johnson, who picked off a pass from J.J. McCarthy in the spring game. I think what really, you look at the guys that are behind Moten, and I think this says, man, how am I going to get any playing time if I'm not the starter now with what's going on with Barry and Sab? So RJ Moten was a nice player. I like RJ Moten. And you talk about him being buried on the depth chart. He played in every game. He was a big part of Michigan winning the Big Ten last year and even the year before, being on the team. So this is a loss, but what are you going to do? I can't go out and handpick the guys that at the bottom of the depth chart that I'd say that I would rather have leave and go into the transfer portal. Moten wouldn't have been my first pick. I like him, but you could make a case that, yeah, he is a guy who you don't see a clear path to getting a lot of playing time. And yeah, Nakai Hill Green, NAHG. I like him a lot, but he was hurt last year. And Michael Barrett, the way account 22 is talking about, the very slow. I actually didn't think that he was very slow. And guys do get beat, but being out an entire year, remember, people weren't that high on Michael Barrett last year, and yet he came in and was very versatile, and at times, starting for Michigan, moving around when, they wanted to go to a different alignment and everything else. And he had a fantastic year for Michigan after, I was thinking maybe more of a special teams guy, but he's in the mix. And then U of M did hit the transfer portal for one of the Magnificent Seven and Ernest Hausman. And if you're looking at weak side linebacker and if you're putting out a depth chart, I don't know if they pinned it to the wall yesterday. Maybe they did, because it feels like gym class when it's like, okay, or maybe not gym class, basketball tryouts. They did do this for basketball tryouts one year. I don't know if they did it every year. Maybe they did. Here's the varsity team. They put the piece of paper on the window, and you had to go walk up there and say, hey, I don't see 50th on this. That's the way they did it. Maybe you had that same kind of experience where you went up there. Actually, my name was on the piece of paper, so that worked out pretty well. But maybe they put a depth chart up there, and NHG didn't see his name, and then Big Poggi down at Charlotte and saying, hey, look, Nakai, you can start for us, and you can get film for the NFL. Come on down. And that's exactly what NHG did. And he'll now go, like a couple other Wolverines, and play for Poggi for Charlotte. We talked all about AJ Henning and how good he was as a punt returner, but how he just wasn't really in the mix at wide receiver. He certainly wasn't last year, even though we wanted to carve out a spot for him here, and we couldn't get him on the field. And then I apologize. I went back and I had a message saying, why was I yelling at people who were suggesting punt returners? I didn't really think I was, but I did go back and listen to it, and I made it sound like I was scolding people about, no, size doesn't matter when it comes down to punt returners. When the truth is, punt returners, they usually are more compact guys. And it's weird because some of the kick returners, like, I don't know, like Cordero Patterson, he's 6'2". I mentioned Dion yesterday. I thought Tim Brown was a little bit taller. He ended up being measuring out. I looked at 6 feet tall. So maybe 6 feet tall is around, what you want. But I always think about Desmond, not the biggest guy. Charles Woodson wasn't too shabby as a punt returner. But, I was mentioning a couple guys that were 6'2", and maybe even 6'3". I don't know, Darius Clemens and Amarian Walker. I was thinking about the cone drill of Walker, why he might be good. But so I apologize for, telling people or acting like it, that was a bad point or something. I think it was actually a good point after thinking about it. But some of the names now, and will it be one of these guys? Roman Wilson, Samaj Morgan, the true freshman, Tyler Morris, the sophomore, or the true freshman, Cole Cabana. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. Now, you could pick 4, and they would have just as much of a chance of getting out there, but these are the 4 that I'm going with. If I had to trim it down to 2, I feel like Roman and Tyler Morris. If I had to pick one out of this group, even though I have Roman Wilson picked first, I feel like Tyler Morris. And it goes back to what I forgot who it was talking about. These guys Tyler Morris looks like he would be a great punt returner. So that's why I picked him. All right. Talking about some of the guys that are going to go in the draft. Shadyville says Derek Moore will be a top 3 before the end of the season. He's talking about as a rush end, or, he's talking about as an overall defensive player. Well, that would be great. I don't deny that. I don't know if I say I'm a Derek Moore truther. I mean, he looks like he's the real deal. I like anything that anybody says about Moore, I'm there with from day one. I saw him at the spring game last year. I'm like, hey, who's this defensive end, senior defensive end? Who's this NFL looking guy? Oh, it's Derek Moore. Shadyville continuing to talk about Derek Moore. I'm in. Scott with the $1 million question: will the Detroit Lions draft any Michigan players? Well, the Lions need a defensive tackle. So if Mozzie Smith was sitting there for the Lions in the second round, do I think that the Lions could pick Mozzie Smith? Do I think the Lions in the second or third round could look at Turner? I do. Do I think the Lions could use a place kicker, a field goal kicker, and they could pick Moody, maybe from the 5th round on? Yeah. So if I had to pick the 3 guys that I could see in a Michigan uniform, and the Lions also need a tight end. So I could see Schoonmaker getting picked by the Lions. I don't know. Anybody else? Yeah, I could see Ronnie Bell. The Lions just lost one of they lost Jamison Williams. So they're going to be looking for some wide receiver help. How about Ronnie Bell late in the draft or as a free agent? Who else? Sounds pretty good that there could be some Michigan players heading to the heading to the Lions. Mark, talking about a lineman in Jenkins, says he'll play like Hutchinson outside, both inside, and Michigan's biggest edge to crush the run and pass with four-man pressures. It could happen. I think there's a chance that could happen. Here's, Richard was excited about the forecast. It's exciting to be able to do it. I do feel like it was a little bit of a cherry pick, but when I started out the show, it was about 10 minutes beforehand. I was not going to the forecast, but then I was asked by Scott specifically to put one in, and I said, hey, let's do it. Is there any chance of a wide receiver having a unicorn season? They seem solid, but nothing that scares any defense like Corum, Edwards, JJ. Some receiver needs to have a big year. Best I see is audible to defensive end and split wide. Yeah. You know who I think could be? So you're talking about a unicorn. You know who I think that could be Michigan's most dangerous receiver? I think it's going to be Roman Wilson. But I think that Colston Loveland could be a star pass catcher. It's the way you look at the pass catchers in the NFL. You look at Brock Bowers and what he's doing at Georgia. Colston Loveland he's that type of player. Yeah, he's a tight end, but he's also just a big wide receiver target and a tight end body as well. And so he could be Michigan's most dangerous piece and matchup concern for all teams out there. He could be one of the best in the conference. I think that. I believe that Roman Wilson and what he has done, Roman Wilson, like you say, he doesn't scare you. I think that when you go to other defenses that play Michigan, when they're sitting around and they've got their defensive coach and they know they've got Michigan and they're going to talk about, we're going to watch the tape. And I think the defensive coordinator gets up there and talks to the head coach, and he'll get in front of his players and he'll have the whiteboard. And yeah, they're going to put the numbers 2. They're going to say, we need to lock out for 7 as running backs. And then they're going to have their concerns about what to do with number 9. And I just mentioned Loveland. What number is he? 18. It's not going to be long before the defensive coordinators put the number 14 out there. And they're going to say, this guy, how are we going to deal with him? He's faster than anybody we have on the team. We need to take our safeties and really put them deep. What they're going to say is that they saw him catching a lot of passes, short depth, and then a lot of yards after the catch early in the season. And then they saw him taking off to try to take the top on the defense a number of times with J.J. McCarthy, and they kind of misfire. But then they kind of got it going, as we all know, with the Ohio State game and against Purdue and against TCU, talking about the passing game downfield. Roman Wilson is a big part of that. And, he could be a star. I think he is a star. I think he's Michigan's biggest threat. I think Michigan fans, I don't know, it's a narrative. And the narrative goes like this. Michigan needs to do better. So one of you said it yesterday, developing wide receivers. Michigan needs to do a better job recruiting wide receivers. Michigan needs to do a better job getting the wide receivers the ball. And they say this. I think this is what's going on. If you just show up every day and say, Michigan, they've got it going everywhere. I mean, look at this thing. This thing is just hitting on all cylinders. Everything's great. Do you have any concerns? Nope. They look great. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that. But what are you going to do? Do you have any problems with the quarterback? No, nobody does. Do you have any problems with their running backs? They got the 2 best running backs in the country. Number 1, number 2. I got a podcast yesterday breaking that down. It's like an hour and a half long. Go check it out. Michigan's offensive line. Yeah, they lost a couple guys, but man, they have brought with the Magnificent Seven some transfers in there, some guys that are proven in there. I think this Michigan offensive line can be as good as last year. So we just talked about the tight end position with Loveland. So there's really you got to go somewhere. And because Michigan ran the ball more often than most teams in college football, I think the easy thing, and I'm not saying this is why, I think it's like kind of human nature. You just go over there and say, we just need a little bit more at wide receiver. And people have made, and I think they're good points. Like when you get to play Georgia, you get to the college football semifinal, Michigan might be able to, run roughshod and, pound their way on the ground to beat Ohio State, who can't deal with it because of the physicality. But the idea and the narrative is if Michigan is going to win it all, they're going to be able to, they're going to be able to need to fire the ball down the field, and they're going to need a passing game. And I agree with that. But as I talked about yesterday, once the Ohio State game happened, the dam burst. The last part, the seal was broken. JJ started firing downfield, and he started connecting. Now once, twice to Kojo, third time to Loveland. He was going down, hitting Kojo in stride. There was a flag on him. He was firing it downfield. Came down to the first drive of the Big Ten Champ. Touchdown. He's got it now, the downfield passing game. I expect that Michigan will be able to unleash bombs down the field. You already know, you saw it even in the spring game with McCarthy. They call it a 15, 20-yard hold, in the zone between the corner and the safety. Some people don't like to get all that technical. You know what you're talking about. McCarthy makes that throw like he's in the NFL. Boom. And Michigan's I think they do have the receivers. Now look, somebody mentioned we were looking at some Penn State tape yesterday, and they were like, Harrison Jr. would have had that one. Harrison Jr. and who's the other? Ibukwe and Fleming, all these dudes for the Buckeyes. They had some other dude. There was, I'm sure, a 5-star that was down there in the spring game that looked pretty good. Ohio State has better wide receivers than half the teams in the NFL. Fact. I mean, you think the Chicago Bears or Green Bay Packers, you think they would take their wideouts? And I know the Bears just traded, and DJ Moore was along for the ride there to come in. I think the Chicago Bears would be like, yeah, this is just in the Lions division. Do I think the Packers? I like Christian Watson. Don't get me wrong. But do I think the Packers would take Marvin Harrison and Ibukwe and the other 4 wideouts that are out there over all of the things that they have? They would do it in a New York second. They did a New York minute, although it took them a New York month to trade Aaron Rodgers. The point is, when people, I think that's the other part to it. Michigan doesn't throw the wideouts too much, and so people need something to look at. And they're just like, hey, Michigan needs a little bit more for the wideouts. Closer examination is they're coming along with the passing game. It's here. It's arrived. But if you're going to compare Ohio State's wide receivers to Michigan's, Ohio State has the best wide receivers in the country. If we're putting an All-American team together, who's going to be number 1 on that team? Harrison, 18. Who's going to be number 2 as an All-American? Ibukwe. First team All-Americans. 1 from Ohio State on one side, 1 on the other. That's pretty good. That's why last year, the guy that was better than all of those guys, Smith and Jigba, I was worried about. He's one of the best college wide receivers I have seen ever in the game. He was that good. I think his name's going to get picked his name's going to be called pretty quick coming up on Thursday, even though he doesn't have those great 40 times. Scott I don't know if he's asking a question or making a prediction or reading the tea leaves or reading what some people are saying online. Jawan signs a big recruit by the end of the week. Sounds good to me. Shadyville says Clemens could have a big year. Morris could do some damage out of the slot. And Roman. I've answered this question a few times about Ronnie Bell. I don't think he gets drafted. I hope he does. But it might be best where he can go out there and say, hey, I can go ahead and pick my team. And then he just rolls out there and finds a team that's good for him. Barry and Sab are going to be very good. There's no question about that. Scott, we're all in agreement. Mark says Deion knocked Jim Harbaugh off the mountaintop as the number one coach in the news. Well, he did right now. I mean, there's obviously there's intrigue. When Harbaugh came in, there was never a coach with the amount of success that he had to go back to college. He could have easily stayed in the pros and would have been hired, Jim Harbaugh, with the record that he had with San Francisco. So he did something that nobody else has done. And then he came in and, Michigan fans loved it. Talking trash to Nick Saban. How's Jim Harbaugh going to get it done? Well, he's going to do the satellite camp thing. Michigan fans, wow, this is awesome. He's going to do signing with the stars. Wow, look at Jim Harbaugh. He's going to travel the world. Whatever that's called. European vacation. Ooh, that seemed like a smart move by Jim Harbaugh. And, then he would, he'd start tweeting at people, telling them to go jump in a lake and everything else, and Deion's got a lot of flash and a lot of charisma. And so, of course, he's going to be right in there. Harbaugh will be back, taking some of those headlines away from Deion when Deion, starts out the season 0-5. Moulton, RJ Moulton will be missed. I'm going to blame that on the tongue. I bit it earlier. Bell would look good in a Baltimore uniform as a late round draft choice. The Harbaugh connection, Scott. I see what you're doing there. I could see it. Moulton barely got any snaps. Do I really think Barrett is the starter the last 3 games, or the up-and-comers beat him out as linebacker? Well, I think when it comes down to the linebackers, if I had to predict right now, I think that Michael Barrett and Ernest Hausman, one of those 2 guys, are going to be the starters opposite of Junior Colson. And then Jimmy Rolder in the mix there. Barrett, sometimes when they needed a different linebacker look, I think against Indiana, he got a start. He got another start out there. So, yeah, I don't discount experience and productivity, and Barrett has both of those. He was a glue guy last year with this defense. He was a big part of the Michigan defense last year. And, coming back for, I don't know if it's a 6th or I don't even know if it's a 7th year, having a guy, if you've ever listened to Michael Barrett talk, I mean, this is exactly the kind of defensive experienced player that you want in the middle of your defense. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Barrett out there a ton and getting some starts, depending on what the opponent has for you, some Devin Hester talk. Size doesn't matter. You are ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know who you're talking about. You are. Me? I'm ridiculous. Or are you talking about something else? Yeah, like I didn't say that. It was more like, yeah, there's a bunch of diminutive guys that were good punt returners. I wasn't saying that it was a requirement to be over 6 feet tall. I was saying that I'm not precluding having guys that are 6'1" or 6'2" as punt returners, which I thought somebody was saying, no, it's normally, smaller guys, which is actually true. But I wasn't being prejudiced towards, I'm not saying you are specifically, but maybe if you're saying that I'm being ridiculous, you could be right. I didn't mean to say that if you were short, I would rather have a tall guy returning punts. You know where I like tall? You know where I like tall players? On the front line of the basketball court, I like tall guys. Let's see. On the football field, I like an offensive tackle to be, a certain prototype. Give me 6'5", 6'6", and up. When I'm talking about tackles. I like my interior offensive linemen. I have, 6'6" is pushing it. I'd say give me between 6'3" and 6'5". I like having some size I like a mixture at wide receiver, but I like to have a 6'2", 6'3" guy for some jump balls. When it gets down, you can box somebody out. I like my tight end position to have some size. I like a 6'5" tight end. Again, you're a mismatch down in the red zone. And then even in the field, you get in there. I like to have a tight end that goes about 250, 260 that has the size, height, and then also can get in there and box somebody out and be a security blanket for the quarterback. I don't think that size matters as a punt returner. It's fine. Just like a running back. Like, I don't care how tall Blake Corum is. Blake Corum, I don't think if he could be 6'5", but at 5'8" or whatever he goes, he's the perfect size for a running back. So that's where I'm sitting. That's where I'm at. I don't know what that means. Okay, we got some feedback on feedback crime. I see that's going on. Shane, it seems like Shane and I agree a lot. Shane is agreeing with me. Loveland is a 250-pound Corda Nelson. Scott likes the whiteboard. Let's draw up some plays. I also like Scott when he brings this to the table. The highlighted feedback. Jordy Nelson. I was going to say, who was it? Corda Nelson. I was thinking, I'm not 100% sure who Corda Nelson is, but I certainly know who Jordy Nelson. I think Jordy Nelson, did he go to Kansas State and then made his name up in Green Bay, catching passes from Aaron Rodgers, old number 12, now number 8, which is weird, for the Jets. I almost, and I didn't do it, but Peyton O'Leary, I was thinking reminded me a little bit of Jordy Nelson, but I think, when you get a white wide receiver, you compare him to other white wide receivers, which, it doesn't mean like, I'm some racist or something. A lot of people do it. People then call you lazy. I don't know. I don't know if this is a funny part or not. Sometimes I will purposely go out there. I have in the past, not in this particular comparison, but I have compared all right, so here's a guy. And then I will compare him to then a black player. And then people would call up and say, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. They don't, the fans generally, but it is true. You get a big white guy in basketball, you generally compare him to other big white guys in basketball. Same thing, with receivers and running backs. He's the next Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, O'Leary. He actually looked like he reminded me a little bit of, for people that are old enough, you'll remember his son, Dylan, McCaffrey. His dad reminds me a little bit of, Peyton O'Leary from what I've said, but I don't know. It was only the spring game. And I don't have any other great comps there for Peyton O'Leary, but I thought Jordy Nelson for a minute. Jordy Nelson, because he had such good he meshed so well with Aaron Rodgers, and it was really something. They were always on the same page, and it was a lot of that. It was a lot of that back shoulder stuff, and you saw a little bit of that from Peyton O'Leary. You can't recruit a wide receiver when you don't pass them the ball. Well, Montrell, here's the prediction for you, an early one. Maybe I should write this one down and put this in my prediction. Michigan will throw the ball more down the field. And they'll have longer touchdowns than they did, a lot more than they did last year. Because it took them to game 12, I'll say it for like the fifth time in the last 2 days. It took them to game 12 to finally connect with their downfield passing game. And then it took off for passes over 20, 25 yards down the field. They started getting them in bunches against Ohio State. And then it just continued on for the next 2 games. I think that they've got it. And sometimes it does come down with the receivers and the quarterback, working together. But once you do it, you can get it going. It's a funny thing in sports. There's a lot of things that you go back to 1956. Roger Bannister ran the mile. And he did it in under 4 minutes. And what happened over the ensuing 10, 20, 30 years? The 4-minute barrier had never been eclipsed. What happened? Was it 56? What happened? I said the 10, 20 years. I'm trying to think of my Roger Bannister. I think that the 4-mile minute had never been eclipsed. Bannister did it. Then I think it was done 10 times in the next year or 2. Now, you'd have to check me on that. Check if I had the producer to check me on the Bannister story. The point here is I'm saying Bannister is the downfield passing game for Michigan and the 4-minute mile. Michigan ran the 4-minute mile against Ohio State, and now they know they can do it. They got it. And they're gonna do it a lot more. We saw it against Purdue. The next game. We saw it against TCU. And I think we'll see it from game 1 against East Carolina. The connection of the long bombs. So, Montrell, I think that wide receivers out there will take notice. And when you say you can't recruit any wide receiver, Michigan with Clemens, Amarian Walker, and Tyler Morris from last year, I think those 3 guys, that seemed like a pretty good trio. Did they bring in 3 more this year? Sure enough, one of them was local in Morgan. But hell, what's his name from St. Louis? Frederick Moore. He looked pretty good. He was in for spring. The highest rated recruit that they had was a wide receiver last year, and Carmelo English. So I'm not putting those glasses on, and I'm not 100% agreeing with this. Edwards, yeah. Corum, I don't know. I don't know what that's regarding. Sorry, I missed it. Corum, I don't know. Somebody's. I'm a huge JJ fan, but I'm not sold on him yet. Sold on him to be the number 1 pick overall in the NFL draft. You're not sold on him being a first-round draft pick. I can see that. I think that let's play buy or sell with J.J. McCarthy. Do you think he's an outstanding college quarterback? Buy. Do I think he can do it all as a college quarterback, running and throwing the ball? Buy. Do I think that he protects the ball well overall, notwithstanding the college football semifinal? Buy. Do I think that he can make all of the throws, including now connecting the downfield passing game? Buy. Do I think that he can go out there and run the table again, that Michigan could be 12-0, 13-0, and could return to the college football semifinal, and that he could be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft next year at this time? Buy. I buy all of that. Now, if you want to say because Michigan doesn't throw the ball on, you're basing it on, the first 11 games of this year, I understand that. You're also, buying into the narrative about the wide receivers, which I pointed out for the last 2 days. I think that Michigan will connect on a lot more of those, and it wouldn't surprise me if McCarthy was a top 5 pick next year. So the part about you're a huge JJ fan, but you're not sold on him yet, you'd have to tell me where. Because I'm sold everywhere on JJ McCarthy, except right now of him being a top, he's not a top 5 pick yet. He has to go out there next year and he has to do it on the field. But I think with a year experience, what I saw from him in the last 3 games, throwing the football, just looking at how the guy handles himself and the talent, how he started out against Maryland, looked a little bit like a chicken with his head cut off in the first half, adjusted, and by the second half had the speed of the game. After the Iowa game, he protected the ball from fumbling it, didn't throw a lot of interceptions. The way he ran the ball, his toughness, the way that he started throwing the ball late in the season. I mean, come on. I project J.J. McCarthy to have an excellent year. So you're not sold on him yet, but you have to tell me what are we selling? Because he can do anything. He can do everything. What are you talking about? There were some big plays against Ohio State, but he was still 50% passing. Badly missed some throws in that game too. I'll have to go back, Shadyville. He did. You're right about the 50% passing. The way he was, dealing, and the one that he threw to the one that is not put into the statistics. And I know you watched the game, but that one that he threw in the second half to Kojo, that was the best pass that he threw all game long. No, he didn't. I'll have to look. He missed some throws in that game too. I'm trying to think about the throws that he missed, and none are just jumping to the fore there. But we can go back and look. It can happen. Let's get to some of the other stuff that we were talking about, and this includes the schedule update. If you missed this is from Michigan football. Here they put out this little picture. I say on Twitter, could have been on Instagram. I'm not 100% sure, but it is official. People were worried. I was worried. They switched this to 2024 with Texas going to be coming to Michigan Stadium. And right now that is confirmed. And as everyone knows who has watched this podcast, I look forward to the Michigan-Ohio State game every year. I look forward to Michigan playing Michigan State every year. Penn State too. I look forward to all Michigan games. When it comes to non-conference games, I like the billboard games. I like the big games. I like the big names. I like the names in the marquee. I like the attractive top 25 matchups. Look at this one. Michigan in Texas. There can't be a more exciting game than Michigan, Texas next year. And yeah, it really depends how you roll. You could be like, Jaden Davis will be starting that game. JJ McCarthy, maybe you're right. But you know what else could be happening? Michigan could be a national champ. JJ McCarthy could come back. Could. It could be JJ McCarthy against Quinn Ewers. It could be Jaden Davis against Arch Manning. I mean, like, come on. And then Western UTEP, and then another one with Western. Some of those games that Antoine likes. He'll be all excited about UTEP coming in. I kid, Antoine. Come on. That's it. All right. Let's take some more feedback. Michigan needs to pick it up in recruiting. LSU is about to pass them, and Penn State just moved into the top 5. Well, let's see where it ends up after today, with the possibility of Michigan picking up 2 4-stars. I've always looked at recruiting, people look at it a lot closer than I do, but I've always thought that if Michigan can get a top 10 class around top 10, then I'm not going to be really worried about it. A little worried last year, but I had seen the success that they had prior. However, saying that, with what they have going on the field and the strides that they've taken with name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal and all that, and I know the transfer portal doesn't equate to recruiting rankings, and that's why blending those two together last year, I think, helped people take a look at this upcoming season for Michigan, which they grabbed 7 out of the transfer portal, and then they were able to bring back guys like Blake Corum and the rest, and they really hit a grand slam this off season. But yeah, being in the top 5 is a nice little goal as we take a look at it. But I don't think it's anything to cry about or get up, like if they end up 6 or something. I want them to be number 1 in recruiting. Being in the again, top 5 is fine. Around the top 5 is going to be okay. But there's no reason to get upset. And especially as we sit here in April about LSU, it's a long way to go until February. If we're sitting here in late August or August and Michigan's dropped out of the top 10, then I might be complaining. Big game against TCU, but the 2 pick sixes, if he learns to be consistent, he will be great. The question is, can he do it? I'll answer the question. Yes. that's my answer. Montreal, coming back to the not sold on JJ point. Blame his coach, who seems like he does not have any knowledge of the offense outside of handing off the ball. Yeah, I've gone through that. That is, Montreal, what we call a false narrative, but one that Michigan doesn't mind. One that Jim Harbaugh, when people complain about, Montreal, you're having a real hard time with all those dubs that Michigan's eating. You're having a hard time with all those Ohio State wins that Michigan pounded the Buckeyes into submission. You had a real tough time when Michigan went to Indianapolis 2 years with all that confetti flying around. Now let's blame the coach. Hey, look, the crazy thing about this podcast, if I was doing it previous to these 2 years, the amount of hand-wringing, the amount of pin pricking in the offense, and this isn't happening, and these guys need to do this, and oh my gosh, I would have been driving the bus on all of that. But there comes a point where when you prove it on the field and you do it out on the field, this is 2020 talk, Montreal. This isn't 2021, 2022, or 2023 talk. You need to evolve. And I know, like, the coach comes on here and he doesn't like to hear about, things are going so well that Michigan, we don't really need to nitpick with the offense. I think it's the tongue. Maybe I'll bite my tongue more often. Don't bite your tongue. Say it. Here's Mark making a good point. The key is catching the ball when it gets thrown deep. Gary's giving a go blue from Virginia. Davis needs to start recruiting better. Well, I'm with you on that, Jason, but it also is early. Jaden Davis, I think, with Ship and Goodwin, the two wide receivers that he's going to be throwing the ball to next year, maybe he gets in there and says, guys, you really want the ball? Join me in Ann Arbor. He's done that online. Hey, these guys want to go make some visits. They want to see the country. Let them go. They have a little bit of time. This part about don't take any visits and commit to Michigan immediately. It's like, I'm going to give the guys a little bit of time. Let them go out there. If they ended up, let's see. Okay. We're moving along here. People are talking about the draft. I mean, this is the direction that I need to go on Thursday. Oh, okay. I'll do it on Thursday. I'll be there. I'm with Richard on this. Love the cowboy hat with Dion. I did too. I didn't see any of the game or anything, but I love the cowboy hat. Dave says M.Barrett will play special teams and be a reserve linebacker in the NFL. He's a leader. Here's some more Devin Harris, Hester, Love. I hear that. Dave says Harbaugh is not listening to us. He will run the football with pro wideouts like his DNA has taught us. Yeah. Yeah, he'll run the ball and then he'll take some deep shots. Here's a little Roger Bannister talk. Bannister had 3 guys drafting him. Mark with a little more follow-up on Roger Bannister talk. Others were better overall. He orchestrated his record race. Yeah, did he run it in Oxford and whatever the track? Was it whatever? I don't know. Was it the gravel? It seemed like it was some kind of wood or something that he wanted for the track. Who knows? It's been a while. I mean, 56 has been a while, but it's been a while since the Bannister stuff. Okay, I think we've been going. Montreal says outside of Ohio State and Penn State, the Big Ten sucks. Outside of Bama and Georgia, the SEC sucks. I don't know. The Big Ten East is not taking a back seat to any division in college football. They're good. And so, I don't think Michigan, as we sit here, I don't think they're taking a back seat to any team. I don't think they're looking at Georgia. I don't think you should. I know Account 22 is not. I don't think any Michigan fan should be sitting here thinking, we're taking a back seat to Georgia. We can't beat Alabama. Boy, that Washington passing game really scares me. The truth is that Harbaugh, really since coming to town, has had his finger on. He just couldn't beat Ohio State. Well, if you look at those recruiting rankings, they're number 1. And they have continued to be number 1. Ohio State brings in an incredible amount of talent. And whatever you think of first base, and he is going to have his challenges this year, breaking in a new quarterback and having to travel to the Team Up North Stadium. It's going to be difficult to win that game because Michigan now is a revived monster. And they are ready. And they are willing to play the Buckeyes anywhere, anytime. It just so happens that this year will be in the friendly confines of Michigan Stadium. If you are a Michigan fan and you beat Ohio State You can beat anybody. And Michigan, you could say, yeah, but they weren't going to beat Georgia 2 years ago. That's true. But they beat Ohio State last year. Ohio State still got in there, and that Georgia team that we're talking about, if it wasn't for that rushed, shanked field goal, however, first base played that final possession, not very good. I have to admit, I had a few drinks going up to New Year's Eve, so all of my, they should have thrown here and everything else. That's what I recall. They didn't run that last series. They were like, hey, we'll just kick a 50-yarder. Should have got a little bit closer. Michigan beat Ohio State, and Ohio State damn near beat Georgia. Michigan had a shot if they would have got to the championship game last year, and I think they got a shot if they get to the college football playoff this year. That's where I'll leave you today. Tomorrow, we'll be joined by Jim Scarcelli, the coach. See where he's at. I bet he's going to want to talk about Coach Prime and his cowboy hat on. That's my prediction. I want to thank everybody for contributing. Hey, if we're all just in agreement on everything that's going on with Michigan football, you don't like the passing game, you want better wide receivers, you don't want Michigan to run the ball, it's all good. It's all good, clean fun what we're having here. Nobody's getting hurt. We discuss it. I'm going to rest my tongue up. Until tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Hit that like button, subscribe, leave comments, all of those things. And most importantly, join the Maize and Blue Review. We'll see you over there on the Den. We'll